Russia's history in the 20th and 21st centuries is one of revolutions, wars, political shifts, and global influence. From the fall of the Russian Empire through to the rise of the Soviet Union, the Cold War, and on to modern Russia, this nation has seen dramatic change in the past 100 years. Let's make a journey into the history of Russia. The Russian Revolution, 1917, fall of the empire. At the start of the 20th century, Tsar Nicholas II ruled Russia under the Romanov dynasty. The country was heavily involved in World War I between 1914 and 1918, which drained resources. As food shortages worsened and political tensions rose, massive protests and uprisings broke out in 1917. Nicholas II gave up the throne, and more than 300 years of monarchy came to an end. Within a short time, the Bolsheviks, with Vladimir Lenin at the forefront, seized power in an event called the October Revolution. Thus, Russia became a communist state, which took a full legal form in 1922 as the Soviet Union, or USSR, in abbreviation. The Soviet Union under Lenin and Stalin, 1922 to 1953. Lenin instituted socialist reforms, and upon his death in 1924, Joseph Stalin took control. During Stalin's rule, the Soviet Union became a superpower, but at what cost? The economy was rapidly industrialized, but millions had to endure forced labor camps and political purges. Then came World War II. In 1941, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. The Red Army resisted, and in the wake of several years of bitter fights, the Soviets took Berlin back in 1945. The victory transformed the USSR into a formidable world power, yet drama with the West had just gotten real. The Cold War, 1947 to 1991, superpower rivalry. The post-war period saw the rise of the Cold War, a decades-long political and military rivalry between the Soviet Union and the United States. Both nations built massive nuclear arsenals, competed in space exploration, and engaged in proxy wars around the world. In 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, which initiated the space race. Then, in 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. Meanwhile, the world came close to nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Despite its global influence, the Soviet economy struggled. By the 1980s, it was clear that change was needed. The fall of the Soviet Union, 1991. Russia's transition. In the 1980s, leader Mikhail Gorbachev introduced reforms, glasnost openness, and perestroika economic restructuring. The latter changes were meant to modernize the USSR, but instead they weakened central control. In 1991, after economic crises and political unrest, the Soviet Union finally collapsed. The one-time superpower broke apart into 15 independent nations, one of which was Russia. Now, Russia was to face another challenge, transition from communism to a capitalist economy. The Yeltsin era, 1991 to 1999, the pangs of a new Russia. Boris Yeltsin became Russia's first president in 1991. Free market reforms were instituted, but the transition was bumpy. Inflation soared, industries collapsed, and corruption spread. The Russian people faced poverty and crime rates skyrocketed. By the late 1990s, the government struggled to pay wages, and Russia defaulted on its debt in 1998. By the end of the decade, Russia needed strong leadership, and in 1999, a new figure emerged, Vladimir Putin. The rise of Vladimir Putin, 2000 present. Vladimir Putin took over as president in 2000 and remains the most influential Russian leader in modern history. Under his leadership, Russia's economy stabilized, powered by oil and gas exports. The government was solidified, and Russia re-emerged onto the world scene. Human rights, freedom of the press, and political opposition increasingly came under scrutiny. Russia also intervened in various international hotspots like the war against Georgia in 2008, annexed Crimea in 2014, and hitherto ongoing tensions with the West. Today, Russia is a global player, buffeted by sanctions, international conflicts, and shifting economic fortunes. Its history is yet to be written. From empire to communism, to the modern state, the history of Russia has been all about power, struggle, and resilience. The country went through amazing changes and still is a huge force in global politics. What does the future hold for Russia? Time will tell. Thanks for watching. If you like this history lesson, then remember, a like and subscription might be asked.